Thanks for coming to my channel. If you enjoy soft, calming stories to help you drift into sleep, please give this video a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. Now, take a deep breath, close your eyes if you'd like, and let's begin tonight's journey together. There is a house at the edge of the fog. Not many people remember it. Fewer still have seen it. Yet it waits, year after year, patient and unchanged, nestled at the very border between the known world and the realm of forgotten dreams. In a land where hills roll like gentle waves and the trees whisper with memories, older than language, the fog stretches out like a vast silver sea. It comes each dusk, slow and quiet, swallowing paths, fences and footsteps, and at the furthest edge, where the fog meets the faint shimmer of starlight, stands the house. They call it the house that hums. No one can say when it was built, or who built it. It has no address, no name, no recorded past, but stories about it drift like smoke through taverns and quiet parlours, passed from dreamers to wanderers, from lullabies to the lips of those who have lost something they cannot name. Elira had heard one such story. It was many years ago, sitting beside her grandmother's rocking chair, the fire casting shadows that danced across the walls. Her grandmother, with her voice like soft parchment, told her of a house that existed only for those who needed it most. A place of rest, a place where time softened and hearts could unburden. Elira had not thought of that story for a long time, not until the silence in her life grew louder than the noise, not until the days began to blur together, and even the taste of the wind felt dull. So she walked. She didn't know where she was going exactly, just that her feet moved towards the horizon, and her thoughts grew lighter the farther she went. Villages gave way to open fields, then forests, and then the fog. It was evening when she saw it. First, just a shape, soft, barely visible through the silvery mist. But as she moved closer, the lines of the house came into view. A gently sloping roof, a chimney cracked with ivy, and windows that seemed to blink with faint candlelight. Elira stood at the gate. The iron was cold and twisted into the shapes of birds mid-flight. The path beyond it was overgrown, but not unkind. Moss padded the stones, and the air smelled of lavender and something older, something like sleep. She stepped through. Each footstep on the path felt quieter than the last, as if even her presence was being gently hushed. When she reached the door, her hand hovered for a moment before touching the handle. It was warm. Not hot, not cold, just familiar. The door opened with barely a sound. Not a creak, not a groan. Just a soft inhale, as though the house was surprised, but not displeased to see her. Inside, the air was still and thick with the scent of old wood and dried herbs. The light was dim, golden, and flickered, as though coming from a flame she couldn't see. The walls were bare, but not empty. They held stories in the grains of the wood, in the way the floorboards curved from years of footsteps. Elira walked forward. There was no dust, no cobwebs, just stillness. In the centre of the main room stood a table. On it, a single teacup, steaming as if freshly poured. Beside it a chair, no one visible, no movement. And yet, it didn't feel alone. She sat. The tea tasted like memory, sweet and dark, with a hint of something she couldn't place. Perhaps it was the same tea her grandmother used to make, or perhaps it was something the house had remembered for her. After some time, she rose and explored. Upstairs, she found a room prepared with care. A bed made of sewn from mismatched fabrics, a small window overlooking a part of the fog that seemed to shimmer faintly with stars. On the nightstand, a book. It had no title, no author, no markings of any kind. But when Elira opened it, her breath caught. The pages were filled, not with words, but with dreams, drawings, fragments of stories, sketches of places she had never been but instantly recognised, faces she had never seen but somehow knew. She lay down, book resting gently on her chest. The pillow was soft, the blanket just the right weight. As her eyes closed, she felt the hum. It was in the walls, in the air, in her chest. Not a sound exactly, but a feeling. A low, warm vibration that seemed to rock her, cradle her, comfort her, like the house was singing her to sleep. Like it had always known she would come. Outside, the fog deepened. The world softened. Inside, the house breathed. And Elira, for the first time in a very long while, slept. She did not dream of sorrow. She dreamed of stillness, of peace, and the house that hummed. In a fog-draped town, nestled between whispering woods and an ever-cloudy horizon, there lived a boy named Elliot. Not yet a man, but certainly no longer a child. Elliot was the apprentice to a peculiar old clockmaker named Mr. Barriston. Their shop stood crooked at the corner of Cobbler's Lane, where time itself seemed to bend. A place where clocks chimed late or early and shadows ticked along the floor. Mr. Barriston wasn't known for his warmth. In fact, most townsfolk believed he was a ghost who had once forgotten to die, now surviving purely out of habit. His clocks were masterpieces, ornate, intricate, and just a little too sentient. The cuckoo in the tallest grandfather clock whispered to itself at night, and the pendulum sometimes swung without gravity's aid. Elliot had no family. Orphaned at 5, he'd grown up running errands for vendors and sleeping under the marble bridge at the river's edge. Mr. Barriston took him in one winter, offering no explanation nor affection, just a spare cot in the attic and 3 simple rules. Never open the trapdoor under the floor. Never wind the silver clock in the back room. Always leave a spoon of honey on the windowsill before bed. Most would find such rules odd, but Elliot, grateful for warmth and food, never questioned them. He spent his days polishing gears, assembling timepieces, and jotting notes in a little book he hid under his pillow. The book was filled with designs he imagined. Clocks that could tell your mood or your dreams, or when someone you loved would next think of you. One chilly evening, while oiling the mechanism of a wall clock shaped like a moth's wings, Elliot heard a faint ticking he didn't recognise. Not mechanical ticking, but something softer, like a heartbeat muffled by velvet. It led him to the back room. The silver clock. It stood tall as Mr. Barriston himself, framed in curling filigree, its face blank, no numbers or hands. The ticking grew louder as he approached, resonating not just in his ears, but inside his chest. Without meaning to, Elliot raised his hand and laid it on the smooth, cold surface. "You shouldn't be here," came a voice from behind. Mr. Barriston. The old man's expression was unreadable. His eyes, always distant, now burned with something between anger and fear. "It called to me," Elliot whispered, unsure why he said it, unsure what he meant. Barriston sighed. "A sound like wind through bones. Then it has chosen." He walked past Elliot and opened a drawer from his workbench, removing a key of blackened brass. He handed it to Elliot without meeting his eyes. "At some point," he murmured, "every clock chooses a keeper. The silver clock chooses rarely." He walked away, hem of his coat trailing a faint shimmer of dust. That night, Elliot couldn't sleep. He watched the shadows play on the walls of his attic room and listened to the faint ticking rising through the floorboards. When the wind outside hissed and the honey on the windowsill vanished without a trace, he understood something had shifted. The days that followed passed with peculiar, new rhythms. The silver clock would tick when no one touched it. Sometimes Elliot would find things he hadn't left: an extra gear beside his pillow, a feather on the workbench, a note in script not his own that read, "Turn left when you hear 3 bells." One afternoon, a customer came, an old woman with wild hair and a violet shawl. "I seek a timepiece that counts the hours I've forgotten," she said. Mr. Barriston looked at Elliot. "You're ready." Elliot blinked. "Ready for what?" "To build a clock that doesn't tell time, but truth." And so he did. Using parts from forgotten drawers and dreams half remembered, Elliot assembled a delicate sphere that glowed faintly when touched. The woman pressed it to her chest and wept silently. Then she was gone. From then on, more people came, not for time but for meaning, and Elliot built them each a clock. Yet the silver clock remained untouched, unwound, until the eve of the winter solstice. The trapdoor creaked open. A gust of wind extinguished every lamp, and a voice, not human, not cruel, but curious, spoke from the darkness. What would you give to truly understand time? Elliot, heart pounding, stepped closer to the trapdoor. The silver key warmed in his pocket. The shop around him blurred, as if the walls forgot what shape they were supposed to hold. He didn't answer. Not yet. But something in him whispered, soon, and above, unseen, the silver clock began to tick backward. The shop was quieter after the solstice, not in the way of sound, but in presence. Something had shifted beneath the creaking floorboards and behind the tick of every clock. Elliot noticed it in the way the air felt slightly heavier, like breath held too long, and how the pendulums took an extra heartbeat to return to centre. He kept the silver key with him now, tucked inside a pouch of velvet and pinned beneath his shirt. Mr. Barriston never mentioned it again, nor the voice from the trapdoor, but his eyes lingered longer when Elliot walked past, and his silence felt deliberate, as if words hovered behind his teeth, waiting for the right hour to be spoken. One morning, as frost spidered across the shop windows and the wind howled with old songs, Elliot awoke to find a new object beside his pillow. A gear, but not like any he had ever seen. It shimmered faintly with colours he couldn't name, and its teeth turned without touching anything. He tucked it into his book of sketches, unsure what else to do. Customers came and went, each with stranger requests. A young man who needed a clock to forget a name, a pair of twins who wanted synchronized watches so they'd dream the same dreams, and a raven-haired girl who spoke only in riddles, asking for an hourglass that ran backward when she smiled. Through it all, Elliot built. His hands worked instinctively now, guided not just by training, but by something older, something that whispered through brass and bone, that hummed in his fingertips when he touched a cog or spring. One night, Elliot dreamed of the silver clock. He stood before it, taller than ever, its blank face glowing like moonlight on a lake. The key turned in his hand, and as he wound it, the world around him unravelled into stars. He awoke with a gasp. The trapdoor was open. Only a crack, but enough. No sound emerged. No light. Only the certainty that he had not imagined it. He rose, wrapped himself in his thick wool coat and crept down the stairs. The shop was a cathedral of shadows. was just ahead, near the base of the silver clock. It hadn't moved further open, but neither had it closed. Elliot crouched. From the gap, he heard a sound. Not a voice, not words, a hum. It resonated through his bones, soft and low, like a lullaby sung by the earth itself. He pressed his ear to the wood. Images flooded his mind. A desert beneath twin moons, a clock tower floating upside down in a sea of clouds, a woman made entirely of sand grains weeping over a broken watch. He pulled back, breathless. His hands trembled. Something was below, or perhaps beyond. He backed away, closed the trapdoor gently, and turned the heavy lock. As he did, he saw Mr. Barriston standing in the doorway. "You heard it," the old man said. "Not a question." Elliot nodded. "It calls when it's close. Not time, not space, but something deeper." He stepped into the shop and sat heavily in his creaky armchair. Every keeper hears it differently. For me, it was the sound of my mother's last breath. For others, it's war, laughter, or silence. Elliot sat on the floor, cross-legged like a child. "What is it?" Barriston looked towards the silver clock. A doorway, a heartbeat, a warning. "I don't know. I've kept it locked for 40 years, but it keeps choosing." The silence after felt like reverence. Later that week, Elliot began work a new clock, not for a customer, not for display. It was an instinct, a pull. The gear he'd found by his pillow became its heart. The body was shaped like a lantern, but instead of light, it cast shadows of memories, fleeting images on the walls, glimpsed only at the corner of one's vision. Mr. Barriston watched, but said nothing. When it was done, Elliot placed it on the windowsill and waited. That night, the honey was untouched, but the clock glowed. It pulsed softly, shadows dancing around the shop like ghostly dancers. And from beneath the floorboards, the hum returned. This time, it was joined by something else, a whisper. One word. Soon, Elliot didn't sleep. He watched the silver clock and felt the minutes stretch like threads of glass. Outside, the snow fell in spirals, and the stars refused to stay still. The next morning, Mr. Barriston handed him a small leather-bound book. "For when the ticking changes," he said. "Not if, when." Inside were diagrams, notes in ancient languages, sketches of timepieces Elliot couldn't comprehend. On the last page, a sentence in shaky ink. "The keeper is never ready, but the clock does not wait." That evening, Elliot wound the silver clock for the first time. He didn't know what would come, only that it was time, and the ticking began. Backward, faster. Tomorrow would be different. Forever. It began with a murmur. On the morning after the winter solstice, Elliot awoke to a curious sound beneath his bed. Not quite a voice, not quite a vibration, but a rhythm, like the breathing of something ancient. He sat up slowly, unsure if he was still dreaming, and listened. There it was again, a hush, 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 like pages turning in a book no one had opened in years. Downstairs, the workshop felt strange, not darker or colder, but expectant, as if the clocks themselves were holding their breath. Mr. Barriston sat hunched over a blue velvet cloth, gently polishing a pocket watch that shimmered between gold and black. Elliot cleared his throat. "Sir, the trapdoor, last night, it opened." Barriston didn't look up. "And it will open again." The voice, did you hear it? The old man placed the watch down and folded the velvet over it. voice has waited a long time to speak. Elliot's heart was a tangle of wonder and unease. What's beneath the floor? Barristan finally met his eyes. Not what? When? That day, no customers came. The clocks ticked, but out of sync. The bell above the door jingled once in the early afternoon, though no one had entered, and the silver clock in the back room, unwound and silent, cast reflections on the wall that showed things Elliot had never seen. A tower upside down, a woman walking backward through snow, a boy himself standing on a cliff under 2 moons. He scribbled notes in his little book, pages now nearly full, each drawing more abstract than the last, spirals within gears, clocks made of smoke, time as a string being pulled taut by invisible fingers. At dusk, Barristan handed him a glass bottle, sealed with red wax. Honey, Elliot guessed. Memory, the old man said. That night, Elliot set the bottle on the windowsill. He lay awake watching the shape of it. The light from the silver clock flickered faintly, and he could hear the hush 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 again, clearer now, words in a language that tickled the edge of comprehension. He drifted into dreams full of staircases that led sideways, of clocks growing like vines up a cathedral's ribs, of a keyhole in the moon. He awoke with one phrase burned into his thoughts. The moment you look backward, it begins. The following morning, Mr. Barristan was nowhere to be seen. A note lay on the workbench. Do not open the trapdoor until it knocks. Elliot stared at the floor. Beneath the rug in the back room was a latch, rusted and cold to the touch. He sat beside it, waiting. Hours passed. He polished gears, wound cuckoo, sketched new ideas. And then, just as he began to doze, a knock. 3 soft, precise raps from beneath the boards. His hand shook as he gripped the latch. The trapdoor opened with a long sigh, as if the earth itself exhaled. A staircase spiraled down into darkness, lit only by faint blue pulses, like breath held underwater. Elliot descended. The air was thick, not with dust, but with time. He could feel it, a weight on his shoulders, a tremor in his teeth. The walls were lined with old clocks, all ticking at different tempos. Some had hands that moved in spirals, others that jumped like frogs. At the bottom, a chamber stretched wide and circular. At its centre stood a dais, and atop it, a clock made of stone and bone and starlight. It had no hands, it had no face, but it watched him. The voice returned. This time it was inside his mind. Keeper of the unwound moment, you have come. What am I supposed to do? Elliot whispered. Remember. The chamber changed. Shapes melted into memories. He saw himself as a boy, watching his parents vanish into fog. He saw the marble bridge where he slept. The first time Barristan handed him a gear and said nothing. He saw every moment he'd ever chosen to move forward when others stopped. He fell to his knees. The clock pulsed. To keep time, said the voice. You must feel its weight, its sorrow, its wonder. Elliot understood. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to reach into his pocket and pull free the blackened brass key. He placed it in the hollow of the stone clock. There was no click, no chiming bell, just stillness. Then, from above, every clock in the workshop struck 12, at once, and Elliot, now no longer just an apprentice, stood tall. He emerged hours later, or had it been minutes, days. Barristan waited by the fire, sipping tea. Did it hurt? The old man asked. pointed backward. The shadows it cast showed futures, and somewhere, far beneath the floor, a new ticking had begun. The ticking of a keeper. The ticking of Elliot. Sleep well, traveller. Time is watching. The night crept softly over the little town, cloaking the crooked streets in a blanket of muted silver. Inside the clockmaker's shop, the air felt charged, thick with an unseen tension that teased the edges of silence. Elliot sat quietly on a worn stool, the silver key cold in his palm, his thoughts swirling like mist in the early morning. The trapdoor, slightly ajar, beckoned like a secret waiting to be discovered. It wasn't just a door anymore. It was a threshold between what was known and what could never be forgotten. He felt the weight of the old clockmaker's words pressing down on him. Every clock chooses a keeper. What did that mean truly? Had the silver clock chosen him? Was he ready for what lay beneath? The room seemed to breathe around him. Shadows flickered across the walls, cast by the faint glow of lanterns still burning low in their sockets. They moved like whispers, soft, fleeting, almost alive. Elliot's fingers trembled as he gripped the key tighter, feeling its cool metal pulse faintly, as if it had a heartbeat of its own. Slowly he rose, the creak of the wooden floor underfoot breaking the stillness. He reached down, fingertips brushing the edge of the trapdoor. A shiver ran through him, but curiosity was stronger than fear tonight. With a deep breath, he lifted the heavy wood and peered into the darkness below. A narrow stairwell twisted downward, disappearing into a depth that seemed endless. The air was cooler here, carrying a scent of old paper, dust, and something ancient, something waiting to be remembered. Elliot hesitated for a moment, then placed the key into a rusty lock embedded in the wall next to the stairs. It clicked, open with surprising ease. With the lantern in one hand and the other steadying the wall, Elliot began his descent. Each step echoed softly, the sound swallowed by the depths below. The walls around him shimmered faintly, the shadows now dancing like living creatures, their whispers growing clearer. Elliot, the voice, was barely audible, like the rustle of silk or the soft brush of wings. It wasn't menacing, but it carried a weight of longing and time. "Who's there?" Elliot whispered, clutching the lantern closer. No answer, only the ticking, the heartbeat of the silver clock, now unmistakably loud, filling the narrow stairwell with its steady rhythm. At the bottom, the stairs opened into a cavernous chamber, lit by the faint glow of hundreds of clocks. Ancient, modern, some unfamiliar, they lined the walls in endless rows, their hands spinning slowly or frozen in time. The air hummed with a strange energy. In the centre stood the silver clock, its face now shimmering with ghostly light. It pulsed softly, like a living heart, calling to him. Elliot stepped forward, feeling the weight of countless moments hanging in the air. Memories whispered from the clocks, laughs, tears, secrets lost and found. He reached out, touching the smooth surface. "You've come," the clock's voice echoed in his mind, gentle yet commanding. "I don't understand," Elliot said aloud. "Why me?" To hold time is to hold stories, to carry the weight of moments. You, Elliot, have the heart to listen. The silver clock began to shift, its face revealing a window into a swirling tapestry of moments. A child's first steps, a farewell whispered beneath the stars, the soft touch of a hand long gone. Each moment flickered like a candle flame. "You see the threads of time," the voice said, "but can its own. "Take this," the voice said. "It is the key to understanding. Use it wisely." Elliot reached in and took the gear. The moment his fingers closed around it, a warmth spread through him, filling him with calm and clarity. Above, the clocks began to slow their ticking, the whispers fading into a peaceful hush. "You are ready," the silver clock whispered one last time. As Elliot ascended the stairs, the trapdoor closing softly behind him, the shop felt different, alive with possibility, filled with unspoken stories waiting to be told. Outside, the fog began to lift, revealing a sky painted with early stars. Elliot paused, looking up, feeling the gentle weight of time settling comfortably on his shoulders. The morning after the silver clock began its backward ticking, Elliot awoke with a lingering heaviness pressing against his chest. The usual sunlight filtering through the attic window was muted, as if the day itself hesitated to begin. Outside, the town moved on, as always, unaware of the strange turn that had gripped the crooked clock shop on Cobbler's Lane. Elliot dressed quickly, the silver key cold and heavy in his pocket. His mind churned with questions he couldn't yet answer. What did the old clockmaker mean by "every clock chooses a keeper"? And why did the silver clock call to him in such a strange way? As he descended the narrow staircase, the faint ticking that had haunted the night still echoed softly from below. He paused at the doorway of the back room, where the silver clock stood silent once more, its face still blank, its mystery undiminished. He reached out, almost unconsciously, brushing his fingers over the smooth metal frame. The surface shimmered faintly under his touch, as if alive. Then a whisper, barely audible, drifted through the room. "Time is not what you think." Startled, Elliot stepped back, searching the shadows, but there was no one there, only the quiet rhythm of the other clocks around him. A grandfather clock striking 7, a small mantel clock chiming softly, the fluttering wings of the moth clock on the wall. He shook his head and decided to leave the shop for a while. The fresh air might clear his thoughts. Outside, the fog hung low over the cobblestones, curling around lampposts like tendrils. The town, usually so lively during the day, seemed subdued. Shopkeepers arranged their goods silently, children played quietly near the fountain, and the distant cry of a raven broke the silence. Elliot wandered without destination, his feet carrying him towards the edge of the woods that bordered the town. The trees there were ancient, their gnarled branches twisted like the hands of forgotten clocks. He found a bench beneath a towering oak and sat, fingers still wrapped around the cold key. He pulled the little book from his satchel, the one filled with his own designs and sketches, and traced a finger along a drawing of a clock that could turn back time. His heart ached with longing, not to rewrite his past, but to understand it. A sudden rustle from the bushes made him look up. An old man appeared, leaning heavily on a wooden staff, his eyes sharp and knowing. "Looking for answers in the wrong places, are you?" the man said, voice gravelly but kind. Elliot blinked. "I'm not sure what I'm looking for," the man chuckled. "Many come here chasing time, boy, but time is a trickster. It bends and breaks. You must learn to listen to its whispers, not just watch its hands." "How do I do that?" Elliot asked. The old man smiled and pointed to the silver key in Elliot's hand. "That key is more than metal. It's a promise, but promises come with burdens." "Who are you?" Elliot asked. "Call me Thaddeus," the man said. "I've been a keeper of clocks longer than you've been alive, and I know the burden you carry now." Elliot felt a chill, but also a strange comfort. Maybe he not as alone as he thought. Thaddeus settled beside him. The silver clock you guard is ancient magic, not just a machine, but a gateway. It connects moments that should not be touched and memories best left hidden. Elliot's mind spun. But why me? Because you see time as more than hours and minutes. You feel its soul. And that, boy, is rare. They sat in silence for a moment. The only sound, the distant tolling of church bells. Tell me, Thaddeus said, what would you give to truly understand time? Elliot hesitated. Everything I have. Thaddeus nodded slowly. Then be careful what you wish for. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees, Elliot felt the weight of his destiny settle upon him. The silver clock was no longer just a curiosity. It was a responsibility, a key to mysteries he was only beginning to grasp. He returned to the shop as the first stars appeared, the ticking growing louder, filling every corner with a strange, living pulse. The trapdoor beneath the floor creaked open once more, inviting him to step beyond the known. Elliot took a deep breath and reached for the silver key. The journey through the time was about to begin. The silver key felt heavier than ever in Elliot's hand as he stood before the trapdoor. The air in the clockmaker's shop had thickened overnight, pressing down with a weight that made every breath a deliberate effort. Shadows clung to his corners, and the ticking from the clocks grew louder, more urgent, like a heartbeat running at a fever pitch. Elliot hesitated. The trapdoor yawned open beneath his feet, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward into darkness. The scent of old wood, oil, and something faintly metallic, like the inside of a watch, drifted upward. With a final glance around the white shop, Elliot stepped down. The creak of the wooden stairs swallowed quickly by silence. At the bottom, he found himself in a vast chamber, unlike anything he'd ever imagined. The walls were made of enormous clock faces. Some stopped forever at midnight, others spinning slowly forward or backward. Gears the size of doors turned endlessly, grinding with a sound that was both mechanical and organic. Light came from no clear source, but the chamber glowed softly, casting long shadows that danced as the gears moved. Elliot's heart pounded as he stepped deeper. He noticed symbols etched into the clock faces, unfamiliar runes intertwined with numbers and constellations. He traced his finger over one, feeling a warmth that seemed to pulse beneath the surface. From somewhere in the darkness, a voice called out, soft, distant, and echoing. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. Welcome, Keeper. You have passed the threshold. Now begins your trial. Elliot's breath caught. Trial. A figure emerged from the shadows. Tall, robed in shifting fabric that looked woven from stars. The face was hidden beneath a hood, but Elliot felt eyes upon him that seemed to see everything. You seek to understand time, the figure said, voice like the chime of 1,000 bells. But understanding is not given lightly. To grasp time, you must navigate the labyrinth of hours. The walls of the chamber began to move, the giant clocks shifting like puzzle pieces, rearranging themselves into a twisting maze. Each hour contains a truth, and each truth a choice, the figure continued. Your journey will test your resolve, your heart, and your mind. Fail, and you will be lost to time itself. Elliot swallowed his fear and nodded. I'm ready. The figure raised a hand, and the air shimmered with energy. Elliot stepped forward and found the floor beneath him shifting, becoming solid and flat. The maze sprawled before him, endless corridors of ticking clocks, pathways lined with gears. limbs swinging in hypnotic rhythm. As he moved, whispers floated on the air, memories, regrets, and hopes mingling with the tick-tock of time. Elliot followed the sound of a distant bell, hoping it would guide him. The first chamber held a clock that displayed faces instead of numbers. Each face showed a moment from Elliot's past. His earliest memories, the orphanage where he had lived, the bridge where he had slept. As he watched, the faces changed, showing what could have been. Moments altered by small choices, chances missed. A voice echoed softly, "What would you change if you could?" Elliot reached out to touch one face, a childhood friend he had never met, but the image faded. "No," he whispered, "I can't change the past." The clock's hands spun wildly, then slowed and pointed toward the next path. He pressed on, heart heavy but determined. The second chamber was colder, the air thick with frost. A clock there had no hands, only a mirror reflecting Elliot's face. When he looked, his reflection shifted to show possible futures. Some bright and hopeful, others dark and uncertain. "Which path will you choose?" The whispered question came. Elliot looked away, unable to face the endless possibilities. "I will choose the one where I keep moving forward." The mirror cracked and a door opened. Each chamber tested Elliot in new ways. Puzzles of time bending, physics, riddles about cause and effect, echoes of voices long gone asking for answers. Some moments filled him with sorrow, others with hope, but he pressed onward, learning that time was not a single path, but a tangled web of choices and consequences. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time lost all meaning in the labyrinth. Finally, Elliot reached the heart of the maze. A vast clock tower suspended in darkness, its enormous hands frozen at the moment the silver clock had first ticked backward. The robed figure awaited him there. "You have done well, Keeper," it said. "You have seen that time is fluid, a living thing shaped by will and memory. Now you must decide. Will you wind the silver clock and accept the burdens it brings, or leave it silent and preserve the balance?" Elliot felt the silver key warm in his hand. His mind raced with the possibilities. The power to change moments, to glimpse the past and future. But at what cost? He thought of the people who had come to the shop seeking meaning. The woman with the violet shawl, the old clockmaker's quiet warning, and the lonely boy who had dreamed of clocks that told truths instead of time. With steady breath, Elliot reached out toward the silver clock's face, and then everything changed. The moment Elliot's fingers brushed against the smooth face of the silver clock, a surge of energy pulsed through him, a warmth spreading from his hand to his chest, like the beating of a new, powerful heart. The world around him blurred, colours twisting and merging, sounds stretching and compressing, as if time itself was folding and unfolding in layers. The silver clock, silent for so long, began to hum, slowly at first, then rising to a melodic ticking that echoed through the chamber, filling every corner with its resonant rhythm. The hands of the clock, previously absent, appeared, shining bright and delicate as strands of light. They moved, but not in the familiar clockwise dance. Instead, they spun backward, counter to the natural flow. Elliot's breath caught. He felt a strange pull, like gravity reversing, as if he was both moving forward and backward all at once. Then the clock face shimmered, and a soft voice, neither male nor female, whispered, "Keeper, chosen. The robed figure nodded, eyes glowing faintly from beneath the hood. The silver clock is no ordinary timepiece. It is the heart of hours, a nexus where all time converges. To wind it is to hold the power of moments past, present, and future. Elliot's heart raced. The weight of that power was both thrilling and terrifying. What does it mean to be its keeper? He asked. To understand time beyond seconds and minutes, the figure replied. To feel its tides and currents. But beware, with great power comes great solitude. As the words settled, Elliot felt the silver key in his pocket grow warm again, almost alive. Without hesitation, he turned it in the lock at the base of the clock. A soft click echoed through the chamber. The silver clock began to tick louder, its glow brightening until it filled the entire space with a radiant light. Suddenly, Elliot was no longer standing inside the clockmaker's shop or the labyrinth. He was somewhere else entirely. The world around him shifted into a swirling vortex of colours and sounds. He saw moments from history flicker like film, reels, a child's first step, a lover's last goodbye, battles fought and forgotten, laughter ringing in ancient halls. Each scene passed with dizzying speed, yet Elliot could focus, picking out details as if reading a story. A calm voice echoed around him. You now walk the path of time. Images froze before him, moments he recognised and others that felt distant yet familiar. Elliot realised he could step forward or backward into any scene, choosing which thread of time to follow. He reached out to a moment where a young girl was planting a seed in a garden. The seed glowed faintly, a promise of something yet to come. As he touched it, the scene expanded, and he found himself in the garden, feeling the earth beneath his fingers. The girl looked up, her eyes wide with wonder. Are you the keeper? She asked softly. Elliot nodded. I think so, she smiled. Then you must learn to listen to the hours. They speak if you know how to hear. Before he could ask more, the scene shifted again, pulling him forward into a bustling market from centuries ago. Voices chattered in languages he barely understood. The scent of spices and baked bread filled the air. A clock tower chimed overhead, not with a mechanical tone, but with a melody that seemed alive, singing of hope and loss. Elliot realised the silver clock was showing him not just time, but the emotions woven into every moment. Joy, sorrow, fear, courage, all rippling through history like waves on a sea. He felt overwhelmed but captivated. Then, suddenly, the vortex stilled. Elliot found himself back inside the labyrinth's heart, the robed figure waiting patiently. You have glimpsed the infinite, the figure said gently, but the true test begins now. The silver clock's hands slowed and stopped, pointing to a single glowing rune. To master time is to accept its flow, to protect the balance between past, present, and future, the figure explained. You must choose a moment to change, knowing all choices have consequences. Elliot's mind raced. He thought of the orphans he had once been with, the lonely nights under the bridge, the people who sought meaning in the clocks he built. He closed his eyes and pictured the moment that haunted him most, the day he was taken in by Mr. Barriston. What if he could change that moment, make it kinder, less lonely? But the figure's voice echoed again. Every change ripples. To alter one thread may unravel many others. Elliot hesitated, then whispered, I choose to let the past be. I want to understand, not rewrite. Gentle warmth spread through the chamber, and the silver clock's hands glowed softly. You have chosen wisely, keeper, the figure said, journey was just beginning. The hours ahead held mysteries yet to unfold, and he was ready to meet them, one tick at a time. The dawn light crept gently through the dusty windows of the clockmaker's shop, casting long golden beams across the worn wooden floorboards. Elliot stood quietly by the silver clock, the key still warm in his pocket. The stillness around him felt heavy, as if the walls themselves remembered the strange journey he had just taken through time. He ran a hand over the face of the silver clock. The smooth surface was cold again. The glowing hands vanished, but the faint hum remained, like a heartbeat beneath the silence. The rest of the shop bustled as usual. Mr. Barriston was already at his workbench, methodically cleaning the tiny gears of a brass pocket watch. The cuckoo clock in the corner flapped its wooden wings, announcing the hour with a sharp mechanical chirp. Elliot tried to act normal, but the weight of the silver clock's secret pressed on him. The labyrinth, the robed figure, the infinite paths of time. They all felt like a whisper from another world, one he wasn't sure he could explain to anyone. He glanced at the little book he always kept hidden under his pillow, the one filled with sketches of clocks that told stories, emotions, and memories. The pages now seemed alive, as if the journey had changed his view of time itself. As Elliot moved to help Barriston, a sudden chill brushed past him. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to stretch and darken, flickering like candle flames. In an unseen breeze, "Elliot," Barriston said without looking up, "there's something you need to see." Curious, Elliot followed the old man to the back room where the silver clock stood. Barriston pulled open a hidden drawer beneath the workbench and revealed a small, worn leather pouch. "This was left by the last keeper," Barriston explained. "Someone who understood the silver clock before you." Elliot took the pouch, feeling its rough texture under his fingertips. Inside, he found a folded parchment, yellowed with age, and a small crystal vial filled with a shimmering liquid. The parchment was covered in strange symbols, loops and spirals that seemed to shift as he stared. At the bottom, a message was written in delicate script. "Time's keeper walks a thin line. To change the past is to risk the future's fall. Trust the silver clock, but beware the shadows it casts." Elliot's breath caught. The warning was clear, but what were the shadows, and how did they relate to him? Before he could ask, the shop's door creaked open. A woman stepped inside, her hair wild, eyes sharp, and a cloak wrapped tightly around her shoulders. "I am Tereska," she said, voice low but firm. "I've come to find the keeper of the silver clock." Elliot's heart skipped. He had heard the name before, whispered among the town's oldest tales as a guardian of secrets. Someone who walked between moments and kept balance when time threatened to unravel. "Why seek me?" Elliot asked cautiously. "Because shadows have begun to stir," Tereska replied. "Darkness that feeds on broken moments, forgotten regrets. The labyrinth's balance is fragile. You must prepare." Elliot looked to Barriston, who nodded grimly. "Come," Tereska said, stepping forward. "The silver clock chooses its keeper, but not all who seek it do so with pure intent. You will need guidance." Together they stepped out into the misty morning. The town was waking slowly, its cobbled streets slick with dew. Elliot felt a strange pull, an urge to follow Tereska into the unknown, beyond the familiar clocks and gears. They walked silently toward the edge of the whispering woods, where the trees stood tall and ancient. Tereska stopped beneath a twisted oak, pulling from her cloak a small mirror framed in iron. "Look," she instructed. Elliot peered into the mirror and gasped. Reflected back was not his own face, but a flickering vision of moments from his past. first stirrings of a deeper understanding. Time was not just gears and hands, but a fragile tapestry woven with light and shadow, memory and hope, and he was its keeper now, chosen to protect the balance, even as the shadows whispered. The town was quieter than usual as Elliot and Tereska made their way back from the whispering woods. The mist still clung to the cobblestones, curling around their feet like invisible fingers, and the sun struggled to pierce the dense grey sky. Elliot's thoughts were tangled, spinning around Tereska's warning and the strange visions in the iron-framed mirror. How do I prepare for shadows I can't even see? Elliot asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Tereska's eyes met his, steady and unyielding. You must learn to walk the labyrinth, she said. Not the one beneath the silver clock, but the one within yourself. Elliot frowned. The labyrinth within? Yes, she replied. Every keeper faces it. It's a maze of memories, fears, and hidden truths. Only by navigating its winding paths can you understand your place in time, and the choices that shape it. Back inside the clockmaker's shop, the silver clock stood silent, its smooth face reflecting the flickering candlelight. Elliot's fingers itched to touch it, to hear its heartbeat again, but he knew the journey was just beginning. Tereska reached into her cloak and produced a small, intricately carved wooden box. She opened it carefully, revealing a delicate silver compass, resting on a bed of velvet. This compass will guide you, she explained. It doesn't point north, but to the true path through your labyrinth. Follow it carefully and trust what you find, even when it's hard. Elliot accepted the compass, feeling its cool weight in his palm. The needle trembled, then settled, pointing steadily toward the back of the shop, where the trapdoor waited silently. For a long moment, Elliot hesitated. The trapdoor was forbidden ground, a boundary marked by Mr. Barriston's rules. But now, it seemed less like a warning and more like an invitation. Will you come with me? He asked Tereska. She smiled. I can only guide. The journey is yours. Taking a deep breath, Elliot turned the blackened brass key in the lock. The trapdoor creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase winding downward into darkness. As he descended, the air grew cooler, tinged with the scent of old wood and forgotten secrets. His footsteps echoed softly, mingling with the distant ticking of unseen clocks. At the bottom, he found himself in a vast chamber, a labyrinth of gears, mirrors, and twisting corridors. The walls shimmered with an ethereal light, and the ticking of countless clocks filled the space like a symphony. The compass needle glowed softly, pulsing with every step. Elliot moved cautiously, following its lead through the maze of shifting reflections and mechanical wonders. Along the way, fragments of his past appeared in the mirrors, moments of joy and loss, courage and doubt, faces he'd loved and fears he'd buried, whispered from the shadows. Face them. Tereska's voice echoed in his mind. Only then can you find your way. At one turn, Elliot stopped before a mirror, showing a younger version of himself. Huddled beneath the marble bridge, the cold night, the loneliness, it all surged through him. Tears welled as he reached out, touching the glass. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't know how to be brave. The mirror rippled like water, and the reflection smiled gently. A warmth spread through Elliot's chest, easing the weight he carried for so long. Further on, the compass led him to a chamber where clocks hung frozen in time, their hands locked in place. Elliot remembered the old woman with the violet shawl, who had sought a clock to count forgotten hours. He realized the labyrinth wasn't just about his past. It was about the moment chances he hadn't taken. He closed his eyes and let the silence fill him, feeling the pulse of time beneath the stillness. When he opened them, the clocks began to tick again, their hands moving steadily forward. At the labyrinth's centre, a grand clock tower stood, a magnificent structure of silver and glass, its face glowing with a soft inner light. Elliot approached, heart pounding, and placed the compass on its base. The tower chimed, and a voice whispered through the chamber. "You have begun to understand, but the journey is far from over." A sudden rush of wind swirled around him, carrying echoes of laughter, tears, and distant memories. The labyrinth shifted and shimmered, opening new paths before his eyes. Elliot knew he had much to learn about time, about himself, and the delicate balance he was sworn to protect. As he ascended the staircase back to the shop, the silver clock above chimed in greeting, his hands glowing faintly in the dim light. Outside, the mist was lifting, and the first clear rays of sunlight touched the rooftops. Elliot stepped into the morning, the compass warm in his hand, and a new resolve in his heart. The shadows were still out there, but so was the light. The morning sun spilled softly through the shop's dusty windows, casting golden beams across the polished gears and brass instruments. Elliot sat at his workbench, the silver compass resting beside him like a silent guardian. His mind still buzzed with the labyrinth's shifting corridors and the echoes of memories he'd faced. Tereska entered quietly, her violet shawl trailing behind her like a whisper. She regarded Elliot with a knowing smile, as if she carried secrets he was only beginning to glimpse. "You've changed," she said softly. Elliot looked up, startled. "I feel different, like something inside me has stirred." "That's the labyrinth's way," Tereska explained. "It wakes the parts of you buried beneath time's weight." Elliot rubbed his hands together, the familiar chill of the shop mingling with the warmth kindled inside him. But what now? The maze keeps shifting, and the silver clock, it's still silent. Tereska's eyes flickered. "The clock waits for its keeper to become whole. But you must confront the past one last time." Before Elliot could ask how, she reached into her cloak and produced an aged, leather-bound journal. Its pages were yellowed and fragile, filled with elegant script and intricate sketches of clocks, some like his own, others unlike anything he'd ever imagined. "This belonged to Mr. Barristan," she said, placing it gently in Elliot's hands. "He was more than a clockmaker. He was a keeper too, but his story ended in shadows." Elliot flipped through the pages, absorbing tales of time-bending devices and warnings scribbled in margins. One entry caught his eye. "The silver clock is both a prison and a key. To unlock its secrets, one must embrace the truth hidden in the past, no matter how painful." His heart quickened. The truth. That was what he needed. Tereska's gaze softened. "Your past is tangled with his. Only by understanding him can you claim your place." Elliot nodded, determination settling over him like a cloak. "Where do I start?" "The forest," Tereska replied. "The place where the clocks first began to change." As twilight fell, they made their way toward the edge of the whispering woods. The trees loomed like ancient sentinels, their branches creaking in the cold breeze. Elliot's footsteps faltered as memories surfaced, moments of loneliness, wonder, and faint hope. He held the journal close, feeling the weight of generations pressed into its pages. Deeper into the woods, the air grew thick with enchantment. Time seemed to slow, the ticking of unseen clocks syncing with his heartbeat. Suddenly, a faint melody drifted through the trees, a haunting tune This is a doorway in time. It bridges moments, long past, and yet to come. Elliot hesitated, then stepped through. The world shifted. He found himself standing in the same clearing, but the woods were alive with light and sound. Birds sang, leaves glowed with golden hues, and a younger Mr. Barriston worked at a bench cluttered with tools and clock parts. Elliot's breath caught. Watching the old man so full of life, so human, was like looking into a mirror of what might have been. Mr. Barriston glanced up, eyes sharp but kind. "You've come," he said softly, as if expecting him. Elliot approached cautiously. "Who are you, really?" The old man smiled, tired but resolute. "A keeper, like you, though my path led to shadows." They talked long into the evening, the forest alive with the hum of time itself. Mr. Barriston shared stories of his failures, regrets, and the burden of the silver clock, a device that had trapped him in a loop of lost chances. "You must break the cycle," he warned. "Learn from my mistakes, or be doomed to repeat them." Elliot felt the weight of the warning settle deep inside him. The labyrinth, the silver clock, the shifting shadows, they were all threads in a tapestry woven with care and caution. As dawn approached, the vision faded, and Elliot found himself back in the present, the forest quiet once more. Back at the seeing shop, the silver clock glimmered faintly, its face no longer blank, but etched with delicate patterns, like a map waiting to be read. Elliot traced the designs with his finger, a new understanding blossoming within him. The journey was far from over, but now he held a key forged from truth and memory. Tereska watched him silently, pride and hope shining in her eyes. "Are you ready?" she asked. Elliot nodded, ready to face whatever comes next. And as the shop's clocks chimed in harmony, Elliot knew that time, with all its mysteries and burdens, was finally beginning to unfold before him. The silver clock's glow pulsed softly in the dim light of the shop, as if it had awakened from a long slumber. Elliot stood before it, the intricate patterns on its face now clear, a complex network of gears and symbols that seemed to shift. Under his gaze, the map was alive, telling a story he was only beginning to understand. Days had passed since his encounter in the forest, but the memory of the younger Mr. Barriston's words lingered like a quiet echo in his mind. Brainy cycle, learn from my mistakes. Elliot didn't yet know how, but he felt the weight of the responsibility pressing down on his shoulders. The labyrinth, the silver clock, the shadows that whispered in the corners of his vision, they were all pieces of a puzzle demanding to be solved. He turned to the journal Tereska had given him. Each page was filled with diagrams of clocks that defied logic, some that reversed time, others that recorded memories like photographs, and a few rumoured to hold entire worlds within their mechanisms. One illustration caught his eye, a clockwork heart wrapped in chains of silver and gold, its gears turning slowly, holding a secret deep inside. Beneath it, a note read, "The heart of time beats strongest when freed from its cage." The words stirred something inside Elliot. What if the silver clock was not just a prison, but a cage for something far greater? Determined to find answers, Elliot began experimenting. He gathered tiny gears, springs, and polished crystals from forgotten drawers and scattered workbenches. Late into the night, the rhythmic clicking of his tools echoed through the silent shop. One evening, as a storm rumbled outside, Elliot's fingers trembled while fitting a delicate gear into place. Suddenly, the silver images flooded his mind. Flashes of distant places, faces he'd never seen, moments suspended in time. A child laughing in a sunlit garden, a ship sailing beneath stormy skies, a pair of hands gently winding an ancient mechanism. Breathless, Elliot pulled back. The silver clock's glow dimmed, but the sensation remained. A whispering promise of secrets waiting to be uncovered. Days turned into weeks as Elliot delved deeper into the mysteries of the clock. Visitors continued to come to the shop, drawn not just by curiosity, but by a need for something beyond time. They sought clocks that could heal wounds, mend broken memories, or reveal hidden truths. Elliot crafted each with care, inspired by the journal's designs and the growing connection to the silver clock. With every new creation, the shop seemed to hum with life, its walls pulsing softly as if breathing alongside him. Yet, the trapdoor under the floor remained closed, its dark presence a constant reminder of the unknown below. One rainy afternoon, Tereska returned, her eyes bright with news. "There's been movement in the labyrinth," she said urgently. "It's changing faster now, reacting to your work." Elliot frowned. "What does it want?" "Balance," she replied. "The silver clock is a key, but also a lock. Until the heart inside is freed, the labyrinth will keep shifting, trying to find its place." The weight of her words settled over Elliot. He wasn't just repairing clocks. He was part of a delicate dance between past and future, time and memory. That night, as thunder rolled across the sky, Elliot dreamt of the labyrinth again. This time, the corridors were lined with clocks, each one ticking in perfect harmony, their faces reflecting moments of joy and sorrow, love and loss. At the centre stood the silver clock, its heart beating steadily, chains breaking away like threads of light. Elliot awoke with a start, a clarity he hadn't felt before. The heart inside the clock, it was waiting for him to set it free. With renewed purpose, Elliot gathered his tools and approached the silver clock. The shop was quiet, except for the ticking chorus of countless timepieces, their rhythms weaving into a soothing symphony. He began to work, carefully unlocking the outer casing, revealing a delicate mechanism at the centre, a tiny clockwork, heart bound by shimmering chains. With steady hands, Elliot traced the chains, feeling their cold resistance. Slowly, he began to undo the bindings, each link falling away like a burden lifted from his soul. As the last chain slipped free, the clock's face glowed with brilliant light, illuminating the shop in a warm golden hue. The gears inside spun freely, faster and smoother than ever before. A soft voice filled the air, gentle yet powerful. "Thank you, Keeper." Elliot's breath caught. The silver clock was alive, not just a machine, but a guardian of time's deepest mysteries. The labyrinths, shifting slowed, the shadows retreating as if satisfied. Balance was being restored. Tereska appeared beside him, her smile radiant. "You did it. You freed the heart." Elliot looked at the clock, now radiant and whole. For the first time, he felt truly connected to the past, the present, and the endless flow of time itself. "Now," Tereska said, "the journey continues, but you are no longer alone." As the shop's clocks chimed in harmonious celebration, Elliot knew that whatever lay ahead, he was ready. With the silver clock's heart finally freed, the shop seemed to breathe anew, each ticking echo more vibrant than before. Yet Elliot felt a strange stillness beneath the rhythm. silence not of absence, but of anticipation. The labyrinth no longer shifted wildly, but its walls hummed faintly, like the distant murmur of a restless tide. The silver clock pulsed steadily, its light casting delicate shadows that danced on the wooden floorboards. Elliot found himself drawn once again to the journal Tereska had left behind. Among its pages, a new entry had appeared, written in an elegant, unfamiliar hand. Time is not a line, but a sea. Some waves crash upon the shore of the present, others ripple beneath, unseen. The keeper must learn to listen to the echoes beyond. That night, as rain tapped gently against the windows, Elliot sat at his workbench, pondering the cryptic message. What were these echoes beyond time? How could he listen to something so intangible? His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden chill that swept through the room. The silver clock's glow deepened, casting an eerie blue light. Elliot approached, and the face shimmered, revealing a hidden panel. He hesitated only a moment before pressing the surface. A soft click, and the panel slid open, revealing a tiny compartment filled with minute cogs and a folded, yellowed map. The map depicted the labyrinth, but with new passages etched in silver ink, routes that shimmered faintly as if alive. Somewhere marked in the heart of the maze was a symbol, a key entwined with a serpent. Elliot traced the symbol with his finger, a shiver running down his spine. Just then, a whisper floated through the air, not from the clock, but from the shadows themselves. Follow the echoes. The voice was gentle, almost a caress, yet it carried an urgency that stirred the hairs on Elliot's arms. He gathered his coat and the silver key, tucked the map carefully into his satchel, and stepped outside. The town lay shrouded in mist, the familiar streets now strange and unfamiliar under the moonlight. Guided by the glowing ink, Elliot made his way toward the labyrinth's entrance, hidden beneath the ancient roots of a massive oak tree on the edge of the woods. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the soft crunch of leaves beneath his boots. As he descended into the cool earth, the walls around him pulsed with a faint light, the echoes growing louder, a symphony of ticking, breathing, and whispered memories. Deep inside, the passages twisted and turned, the silver paths illuminating the darkness. Elliot followed them carefully, feeling the weight of unseen eyes watching, waiting. At last, he reached a chamber unlike any before. In its centre stood a pedestal, upon which rested a small, intricately carved box, sealed with the same serpent key entwined in the map's symbol. With a steady breath, Elliot inserted the silver key. The lock clicked open, and the box creaked as it revealed its secret. Inside lay a delicate hourglass, its sands shimmering with stardust. As Elliot lifted it, the air around him seemed to ripple, and he glimpsed visions, moments from lives long, past and futures not yet written. The hourglass was no ordinary timepiece. It was a vessel of echoes, capturing fragments of time itself. Understanding dawned upon him. The echoes beyond time were the memories of all who had ever touched this labyrinth. Keepers, seekers, dreamers. Elliot felt a surge of purpose. To truly understand time, he had to embrace these echoes, learn from them, and guard them. With the hourglass in hand, he made his way back to the surface, the labyrinth settling into a peaceful stillness behind him. Back in the shop, he placed the hourglass beside the silver clock. Together, they hummed in quiet harmony, guardians of a secret deeper than time. Elliot knew this was only the beginning. like just a place filled with clocks and gears, but rather a sanctuary of secrets, a crossroads between what was, what is, and what might be. The silver clock and the shimmering sands of the hourglass pulsed softly, their rhythms intertwining like a silent symphony played just for Elliot. Days melted into nights as Elliot found himself utterly absorbed by the hourglass. He noticed strange things. The stardust sands didn't just fall downward. Sometimes they would swirl, forming delicate patterns that seemed almost deliberate, as if they were responding to his very thoughts. At times, the sands appeared to float upward, defying gravity's relentless pull, and for a fleeting moment, Elliot glimpsed flickers of memories, moments not his own, images of people, places, and emotions he could not fully grasp. One evening, the sky outside the crooked window burned with twilight hues of violet and gold, the last light of day slipping away slowly. The shop was quiet, except for the faint ticking of countless clocks, each marking time in its own way. Suddenly, a knock echoed sharply against the wooden door, breaking the fragile silence. Elliot opened it cautiously. Standing there was a figure draped in a deep indigo cloak, their face hidden beneath a shadowy hood. The air seemed to thicken with a strange energy, as if the very atmosphere acknowledged the presence of something otherworldly. "You carry the echoes," the stranger's voice whispered, like wind rustling through dry autumn leaves, soft yet laden with meaning. Elliot swallowed hard. "I found the hourglass in the labyrinth," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It showed me memories, lives, stories beyond time." The stranger nodded slowly, the faintest smile curving beneath the hood. "Good, but the echoes are threads in a vast tapestry, and some threads are frayed, broken beyond repair, unless mended by those who understand their weight. The labyrinth is not merely stone and shadow. It is a weave of time itself, fragile and ever-shifting." The stranger stepped inside, revealing a slender hand that held a spool of shimmering silver thread, delicate and glowing faintly with a light that seemed woven from moonbeams. "This thread," the stranger continued, "connects moments, binding past, present, and future. But some threads have broken. Left untended, time's fabric will unravel, and the consequences will ripple through all lives." Elliot took the spool with trembling fingers. A warmth spread through his palm, as if the thread itself recognized him, acknowledging his reluctant destiny. "How do I fix it?" Elliot asked, his voice steady despite the sudden weight settling on his shoulders. "By listening," the stranger said, voice soft yet commanding. "By weaving with care, by stepping beyond what is seen and understood. Time is alive, a living river that flows both forwards and backwards, and sometimes sideways. To mend it, you must become one with its currents." Before Elliot could respond, the shop around them began to dissolve into a haze of swirling light and shadow. The walls melted away, and he found himself standing on what looked like a colossal loom, threads of radiant light stretching endlessly in all directions, crossing and weaving in patterns too complex for the mind to grasp fully. The shadows flickered at the edges of his vision, whispering secrets from forgotten moments. Voices murmured, faint fragmented phrases that spoke of joy, sorrow, courage, regret, emotions that transcended time and space. Guided by the silver thread, Elliot reached out to touch the glowing strands. Each one vibrated with stories, and as his fingers brushed itself back into balance. But not all threads welcomed his touch. Dark knots twisted violently, resisting fiercely, threatening to snap the delicate web with their tension. Elliot's heart hammered in his chest as he struggled to hold the thread steady, sweat beading on his brow. "Remember," the stranger's voice echoed around him like a breeze through ancient trees. "Time is alive. Respect its rhythms, and it will guide you." With renewed determination, Elliot focused every ounce of concentration, weaving and mending, until, finally, the last knot gave way. A flood of blinding light burst forth, washing over the loom in waves of warmth and clarity. Suddenly, Elliot blinked and found himself back in the shop, the familiar ticking of the silver clock steady and sure, the hourglass sands glowing with a soft inner light. The stranger was gone, but where they had stood lay a small, delicate pendant, a tiny silver clock, its hands frozen at midnight. Elliot picked up the pendant and held it close, feeling the weight of responsibility it represented. It was a symbol, a reminder of the delicate balance he now guarded between past, present, and future. Outside, the fog that had clung to the town for so long began to lift, revealing a sky sprinkled with stars shining clearer and brighter than ever before. Elliot smiled softly, a quiet hope blossoming within him. The journey was far from over, but with each thread woven, the echoes beyond time grew stronger. And so did he. The morning light filtered weakly through the crooked windows of the shop, casting long, wavering shadows across the worn wooden floorboards. Elliot sat at the workbench, the silver pendant resting quietly in his palm, its delicate clock face frozen at midnight, untouched by time. It was a strange sort of calm, the kind that hums just beneath the surface, waiting to be stirred. Outside, the town had begun to awaken from its long, fog-bound slumber, but inside the shop, the air was thick with anticipation, as if something unseen was preparing to unfold. Elliot traced his finger along the edges of the pendant, pondering its meaning. The stranger's words echoed in his mind. Time is alive, but how alive? How conscious? He had felt the weight of the threads, the fragile balance he had helped restore, yet a restless tug at the edges of his thoughts whispered that there was more to uncover. His eyes drifted to the silver clock standing tall in the corner, its face still blank and hands absent. It had remained silent since the night the trapdoor opened, its ticking a quiet heartbeat barely heard. But now, as Elliot watched, the clock's surface shimmered faintly, as if awakening from a long sleep. He stepped closer, heart quickening. The silence deepened. Then suddenly, a low hum began to vibrate through the air, a sound both mechanical and organic, like the deep pulse of a living creature. The pendulum, long still, started to sway gently, its movement slow but deliberate. Elliot reached out and placed a hand on the smooth frame. The hum grew louder, resonating through his skin, settling deep in his bones. His breath caught as the clock face flickered. Images blossomed briefly on its surface. Flashes of faces, places, moments frozen in time. A sudden jolt of understanding surged through him. The clock wasn't just a keeper of hours. It was a guardian of memories, a vessel holding the essence of moments long past and those yet to come. But why and how? The pendant in his hand pulsed with warmth, as if responding to the silver clock's awakening. Elliot slipped it around his neck, feeling an odd comfort settle within him. Suddenly, the shop seemed to hold its breath. Then came a whisper, soft, distant, Elliot's eyes darted around, searching for the source. The voice felt less like sound and more like thought, an echo inside his mind. He closed his eyes and listened carefully. The ticking didn't just mark time, it carried secrets, rhythms hidden beneath the surface, patterns weaving through the silence. He focused, attuning himself to the cadence. The pendulum swung faster, its pace syncing with his heartbeat. Images surfaced again, this time clearer. A city lost beneath waves, a girl standing by a fire, a man reaching toward a falling star. They felt like memories not his own, but somehow familiar. A gentle pressure built in his chest, urging him to act. He opened a drawer on the workbench and pulled out a slender tool, worn smooth from use. The silver clock's frame creaked softly, and a hidden panel slid open along its side, revealing a delicate mechanism unlike any Elliot had seen. Tiny gears spun silently, engraved with symbols that shimmered faintly. At their centre, a small pendulum hung, carved from crystal and catching the light in fractured rainbows. Elliot's fingers trembled as he reached inside and lifted the pendulum. The moment he did, the entire shop seemed to shift. The air thickened, colours deepened, and time itself felt stretched and bent. Images swirled around him like a storm. Moments of joy and sorrow, triumph and regret, flickering like fragments of a broken mirror being pieced back together. He understood now. The silver clock was not merely a device, but a gateway, a bridge between moments and memories, between what was lost and what could be found. But such power came with a cost. The pendulum pulsed in his hand, warm and alive. Elliot felt a strange connection, a bond that tethered him to the flow of time itself. He could feel the weight of countless lives, the echoes of choices made and unmade. Suddenly, the whisper returned, clearer this time. Balance the past and the future, or all will unravel. Elliot's mind raced. What did it mean? How could he balance something so vast and intangible? He glanced down at the pendant, now glowing softly against his chest. A thought flickered. Perhaps the pendant was the key, a counterbalance to the silver clock's power, anchoring him amidst the tides of time. Determined, Elliot placed the crystal pendulum back inside the clock's heart and closed the panel. The clock's face lit up with soft light, its blank surface now etched with delicate constellations, stars that seemed to pulse with every tick. Hours passed in a silent communion between Elliot and the clock, each beat revealing more secrets, more whispers carried on the wind. By nightfall, the shop felt alive with possibility. Elliot knew his journey was far from over. The silver clock and the pendant had opened a door, one that would lead him deeper into the mysteries of time, memory, and fate. Outside, the stars shone brighter than ever, as if the universe itself was, watching, waiting, and Elliot, apprentice to the clockmaker, stood ready to face whatever came next. The air in the clockmaker's shop had grown thick with silence, an almost tangible stillness that seemed to press against Elliot's skin as he stood alone under the dim glow of the flickering lantern. The silver key weighed heavy in his pocket, a constant reminder of the secret that waited just beneath his feet. For nights now, he had resisted the urge to open the trapdoor, but tonight the quiet whispered to him, louder than ever before. Outside, the fog clung to the cobblestones like a velvet shroud, muffling the sounds of the waking town. Even the usual creaks and groans of the old wooden building seemed to pause in anticipation. Elliot's fingers itched to turn the key, to see what lay in the darkness below. What secrets had Mr. staircase spiralling down into blackness. A wave of cold air rose from the depths, carrying with it a faint scent, something metallic, like old gears mixed with forgotten memories. Elliot hesitated, then lit a slender candle from the lantern. The flame flickered and danced, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers along the damp stone walls. Step by step he descended, each creak of the wooden stairs filling the silence. The walls closed in around him, rough and cold beneath his fingertips. At the bottom, the space opened into a cavernous chamber. Ancient clocks lined the walls, their faces frozen in time, hands stuck at impossible hours. Dust drifted in motes through the air, disturbed by his movement. In the centre stood the silver clock, larger and more imposing than it had seemed upstairs. Its blank face now glimmered faintly, as if holding a light from within. Elliot's heart pounded. The ticking he had heard before was louder now, steady and insistent, like a pulse. He reached out, touching the clock's surface, and suddenly the world shifted. The chamber dissolved into a swirling mist of stars and shadows. Elliot found himself standing in a vast landscape of time itself, hours and days flowing like rivers, memories swirling like leaves caught in a gentle breeze. Voices whispered all around him, fragments of moments long past and those yet to come. Figure approached through the haze, cloaked in silver and light. "Welcome, Keeper," the voice said, calm and deep. "You have unlocked what few ever dare to see." Elliot swallowed hard. "What is this place?" "The heart of time," the figure replied. "A realm where past, present, and future converge. Here, you may witness the threads that weave your world together." Elliot's gaze drifted over the shifting scenes. Faces of strangers and friends, laughter and tears, beginnings and endings. One image caught his eye. A moment of himself, years ago, sleeping beneath the marble bridge. The loneliness, the cold, the hope for something more. "Why am I here?" Elliot asked. "To understand," said the figure. "To learn what it means to hold time's secrets. But be warned, the knowledge comes at a price." The mist thickened, swirling faster. Images became sharp, vivid. Elliot saw his own fears and dreams laid bare. The times he wished to rewind. The moments he feared to face. "Will I lose myself?" he whispered. "Only if you forget why you started," the figure answered. "Remember, time is not just a measure, but a mirror. It reflects who you are." Elliot took a deep breath, feeling the weight of years and choices press down and lift him at once. The silver clock's heartbeat pulsed stronger, and he knew that his journey had only just begun. Slowly, the vision faded. He found himself once again in the chamber beneath the shop, the candle flickering low. The silver clock stood silent, its mystery deeper than before. Elliot climbed the stairs, each step lighter, his mind racing with new questions and possibilities. Above, the shop was unchanged, yet nothing would ever be the same. As he blew out the candle, a single thought settled in his heart. Time was no longer just something to be kept. It was something to be lived. And somewhere, beyond the walls and shadows, the silver clock waited. The days following Elliot's descent into the chamber beneath the shop were heavy with an unspoken shift. Though the clocks ticked as usual, and the dust motes danced in the afternoon sun, something within Elliot pulsed differently, an awakening of senses tuned to rhythms no one else could hear. He found himself wandering Cobbler's Lane with a new attentiveness, catching unseen places. One afternoon, as a pale drizzle misted the narrow street, Elliot paused outside the town's old library, a place forgotten by most, its doors rarely opened, and its shelves gathering the whispers of ages. Curiosity tugged at him, urging him inside. The air smelled of faded parchment and ink, a scent as ancient as the stories contained within. Rows upon rows of books stretched into darkness, illuminated only by thin beams of light sneaking past stained glass windows. Behind the counter sat an elderly librarian with eyes as sharp as the turning pages of time. "I've never seen you here before," she said without looking up. I'm looking for something," Elliot admitted. "Something about time, about clocks." The librarian's lips twitched into a knowing smile. "Many come seeking what time hides from them. Follow me." She led him through twisting aisles until they reached a secluded alcove where a single book lay open on a pedestal. Its cover was leather-bound, embossed with intricate gears and symbols that seemed to shift when caught in the light. "This is the Codex Horologium," the librarian whispered, "a chronicle of forgotten hours and the keepers who guard them." Elliot's fingers traced the faded script. The pages told tales of those who had mastered moments lost to history, timekeepers who had turned back the clocks to rewrite fate, or who had paused seconds to save lives unseen. One passage caught his eye, and in the hour between heartbeats, the true keeper sees beyond the veil, touching what cannot be touched, hearing the silence beneath the tick. As Elliot read, the shop's silver key warmed again, pulsing with urgency. The librarian nodded, as if sensing the shift. "You hold the key to the forgotten hour," she said softly. "But beware, for to wield such power is to dance on the edge of what is and what might have been." The warning echoed in Elliot's mind as he left the library, clutching the codex under his arm. Outside, the fog had thickened, wrapping the town in a silent embrace. Back in the shop, the silver clock waited. Its face remained blank, yet Elliot now understood it was a portal, not just to time's secrets, but to the fragile threads that wove together moments, memories, and choices. That night, as the town's clocks chimed in unison, Elliot sat by the window, the codex open before him. The words blurred as sleep tugged at his eyelids, but a new resolve burned within. Tomorrow, he would step beyond the boundaries of hours known, into the forgotten places where time whispered its deepest truths. And somewhere, beneath the floorboards, the silver clock's heartbeat grew steady, ready to guide him onward. The morning light spilled softly through the grime-coated windows of the clockmaker's shop, casting muted patterns over the scattered gears and tools. Elliot sat at his workbench, the Codex Horologium open beside him. The ancient tome had become both his guide and his burden, filling his thoughts with riddles and half-glimpsed secrets. Outside, the town stirred as usual, but inside the crooked shop, time felt like it was holding its breath. Elliot's fingers trembled slightly as he reached for the silver key. It rested cold against his palm, but he knew it held a warmth that no ordinary metal should carry. His eyes flicked toward the silver clock, standing tall and silent like a sentinel. Its blank face seemed almost expectant, waiting for him to unlock the next chapter of his journey. He had spent days deciphering the Codex's cryptic passages, learning about the Hourglass of Whispers, a legendary artifact said to exist beyond time itself. The Codex described it as a vessel that captured not sand, but moments, the lost, the forgotten, and the whispered secrets that slipped between seconds. Whoever possessed the hourglass could forgotten truths of the past, and perhaps shape the future. Elliot's heart thudded with a mixture of fear and anticipation. To find the hourglass would be to confront the very nature of time, to peer into shadows that had never been meant for mortal eyes. Determined, he gathered his tools and tucked the codex carefully into his satchel. The shop felt colder than usual, the ticking of clocks growing distant and hollow. As he approached the silver clock, the key in his hand seemed to pulse in rhythm with the faint ticking that rose from the depths beneath the floorboards. Taking a deep breath, Elliot inserted the key into the lock hidden in the filigree. The mechanism resisted briefly before yielding with a low, resonant click. The clock's blank face rippled like liquid silver, and a soft glow filled the room. Suddenly, the walls seemed to dissolve, and Elliot found himself standing in a vast hall, suspended in twilight. Shadows stretched endlessly in all directions, punctuated by towering hourglasses filled with shimmering light instead of sand. A figure stepped from the shadows, a woman draped in robes that shimmered like moonlight. Her eyes held the calm of countless ages. "Welcome, keeper," she said, voice like a gentle breeze. "You have entered the Hall of Whispers, where lost moments gather." Elliot's throat tightened. "I seek the hourglass of whispers." She nodded. "To find it, you must listen. To the silence between ticks. To the echoes hidden in your own heart." The hall hummed with quiet energy. Elliot moved forward, drawn toward the largest hourglass at the centre, its glow pulsing like a heartbeat. As he neared, the glass surface shimmered, and 1,000 voices whispered in unison. Fragments of forgotten promises, laughter long faded, tears never shed. He reached out, fingers brushing the smooth glass, and suddenly images flooded his mind. A child's first step, a whispered apology never spoken, a moment of courage lost in the chaos of a forgotten day. Tears blurred his vision. Time was not just a river flowing forward, but a tapestry woven from countless moments, each one precious and fragile. The woman's voice returned. "The hourglass shows not just what was, but what might have been. It asks of you a choice, keeper. Will you hold the past gently, or try to change it?" Elliot's hand trembled as he considered the weight of such power. To change even a small moment could unravel the delicate threads that bound his world. "I will hold it gently," he said at last, "and learn." The hourglass glowed warmly, and the soft wind carried the whispers away. The hall faded, and Elliot found himself back in the shop, the silver clock silent once more. He sat, heart racing, knowing his journey was far from over. The secrets of time were vast, and the choices ahead would test not just his skill, but his very soul. Outside, the town clock struck noon, its chime ringing clear and true. Elliot looked to the window, feeling a new strength within. The forgotten hour was no longer lost to him. It was a light guiding him forward into the mysteries yet to come. Elliot sat quietly in the dim light of the workshop, the lingering warmth from the Hall of Whispers still echoing faintly in his veins. The silver clock stood silently, its face as blank and inscrutable as ever. Yet something had changed. Not in the clock itself, but in him. The knowledge he had gained weighed heavily on his mind, like a secret whispered on a breeze that could not be caught. Outside, the town moved on, oblivious to the extraordinary currents weaving beneath its cobbled streets. People hurried past the crooked shop, their lives ticking forward in the predictable rhythms of day and night. But Elliot knew the truth. Time not a simple path, but a labyrinth of choices, echoes, and shadows. For days, he avoided the silver clock. He buried himself in mundane repairs and the steady hum of more ordinary clocks, the kind that measured hours and minutes without any hint of mystery. But the pull was irresistible. The key burned faintly in his pocket, a constant reminder of the path he had taken and the one yet ahead. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Elliot heard a soft, persistent ticking, unlike any before. It was delicate, almost like a whisper. He followed it to the trapdoor beneath the floorboards, the forbidden place he had been warned to avoid. His fingers trembled as he lifted the hatch. Cold air spilled upward, carrying with it a faint scent of ancient dust and forgotten dreams. Below, a spiral staircase wound downward into darkness. Elliot hesitated. Every instinct screamed caution, but curiosity, the same force that had guided him this far, urged him onward. He descended, step by careful step, until he reached a vast cavern illuminated by countless glowing hourglasses, suspended in midair. Each one pulsed with a unique rhythm, colours shifting like the northern lights, casting eerie patterns across the stone walls. At the centre, an enormous hourglass stood taller than any he had seen before. It was the edge of time, a legendary boundary between what was and what could be, between memory and possibility. A voice echoed softly, not from a person, but from the very air around him. "Welcome, Keeper. You stand on the brink of time itself." Elliot's heart hammered in his chest. What must I do? To step forward is to accept that time is both gift and burden. To change one moment is to risk unravelling countless others. Yet to stand still is to let life slip away. From the shadows emerged a figure, neither young nor old, wearing a cloak woven from shifting stars. Their eyes reflected the infinity of the cosmos. You have held the hourglass of whispers gently, but now comes the true test. Will you cross the edge and face the consequences of choice? Elliot's mind raced. He thought of the people he had met, the moments he had glimpsed in the hourglass, the joy, the sorrow, the regrets. Could he alter a thread without destroying the tapestry? "I must," he whispered. With that, the figure nodded and extended a hand. Elliot grasped it, feeling a surge of energy that blurred his senses. Suddenly, he was no longer in the cavern, but standing at the crossroads of countless timelines, each shimmering with possibility. Voices from every path called to him, some pleading, some warning, some laughing with reckless abandon. Elliot closed his eyes, focusing on the steady pulse of the silver key in his pocket. It was his anchor. One by one, he touched the threads, sensing their delicate balance. He saw a child saved from a fall, a word of kindness given instead of harshness, a moment of courage that blossomed into legend. But he also felt the fragile weave tremble, each change rippling outward, unpredictable and vast. The keeper beside him spoke softly. "The edge is not a place of certainty, but of responsibility." Elliot opened his eyes, heart heavy but resolute. He chose carefully, altering a single moment where a friend's sorrow might be eased. The timeline shifted. The town outside seemed to sigh, a subtle change in the air. Returning to the workshop, Elliot found the silver clock glowing faintly, its face now marked with a single hand pointing to an unknown hour. He understood then that his journey was not about mastery over time, but about respect for its fragile beauty. The clockmaker's workshop felt alive with possibility, the ticking of countless clocks blending into a harmonious song. Elliot smiled softly, knowing the next chapter awaited, one that would test the strength of his heart and the depth of his wisdom. Elliot stood in the dim morning light that filtered through the tall, dusty windows of the workshop. The air was heavy with the familiar scent of oil, aged wood, and just a hint of something new. Something electric, like the quiet hum of anticipation. The silver clock, once an enigma wrapped in silence, now ticked steadily, its single hand slowly rotating, marking not the passage of ordinary time, but the weaving of moments, past, present, and future, interlaced in a delicate dance. The journey that had begun with timid curiosity and cautious steps had transformed Elliot into something else entirely, the keeper of time, not a master who controlled the seconds or hours, but a guardian entrusted with the fragile threads that bound all moments together. Time, Elliot had learned, was less a river flowing straight than an intricate tapestry, vulnerable to the faintest touch. Today, the final chapter of this journey would be written. Beneath the floorboards, the trapdoor creaked open with a slow inevitability. Elliot descended once more into the cavern below, where countless hourglasses floated weightless, their sands spilling in patterns of light and shadow, each a fragment of a life, a choice, a possibility. In the centre stood the figure cloaked in starlight, their presence calm yet commanding, eyes reflecting the vast cosmos. They were neither entirely human nor otherworldly, an ancient guardian, a timeless witness. You have walked the edge of time bravely, Elliot. The figure spoke softly, voice echoing like a distant melody. And now, you must choose your legacy. Elliot's chest tightened. I don't know if I'm ready. The figure's gaze softened but did not waver. The true test is not readiness, but the courage to choose despite fear. The hourglasses around them shifted and swirled, revealing glimpses of lives Elliot had touched, moments where his decisions sparked kindness, healed wounds, or opened doors to hope. One hourglass, glowing brighter than the rest, drew his attention. A little girl with eyes full of light, clutching a clockwork bird that sang a melody of hope and new beginnings. She is Sarah, the figure said, one whose future you saved, a beacon in the weave of time. Elliot felt a bittersweet ache swell inside him, joy for the lives touched, sorrow for those irrevocably changed or lost. Every decision had a price, every thread pulled altered, countless others. The keeper stepped closer, placing a steady hand on Elliot's shoulder. Now, decide. Will you remain here, as guardian of time's delicate balance, guiding those who seek its truths? Or will you return to the world above, carrying your wisdom, but leaving the silver clock and all it protects behind? Elliot's gaze drifted upward toward the workshop bathed in sunlight. The world he knew, simple and unchanged, yet inside something deeper stirred. He thought of the lonely nights filled with ticking shadows, the strange gifts left at his side, and the silent lessons whispered by the silver clock. He realized this journey had forged him anew, not just as an apprentice, but as a keeper of hope, a protector of dreams. I will stay, Elliot said, voice steady, to guard time's fragile threads and to help those who come seeking meaning and truth. The figure smiled, stars shimmering brighter in their cloak. So it shall be. A gentle glow enveloped Elliot, spreading warmth through his limbs and soul. The silver clock's lone hand completed its slow rotation, now pointing to a bright hour, an hour of new beginnings, an eternal watchfulness. Back in the workshop, the clocks resumed their symphony of delicate chimes and rhythmic ticking, their melodies weaving with the steady beat of Elliot's heart. He was no longer just a boy or an apprentice lost in time's folds. He was the keeper, guardian of moments, memories, and dreams. And in the quiet ticking, he found peace. As Elliot settled into his new role, visitors came with stories and requests, seeking clocks that measured not hours, but hope, courage, and forgotten dreams. With steady hands and a kind heart, he crafted each piece, imbuing them with the wisdom of time's endless flow. Sometimes the silver clock whispered secrets to him in the stillness of night, tales of futures yet unseen, reminding him of the immense responsibility he bore and the fragile beauty of every fleeting moment. And so, the story continues, not just for Elliot, but for all who dare to listen to the soft ticking beneath the surface of time. Thank you for sharing this journey. If this story brought you calm or wonder, please like and subscribe so we can meet again for another quiet moment in the world of clocks and dreams.